Are you feeling maybe a little bit exhausted, maybe a little bit drained, and you're like, I want to move forward and I'm just finding it really hard, and maybe you feel a bit defeated? Well, today I want to really talk about just doing the small things and how that can create real momentum in your life, in your confidence, and in your mental health and your growth. And if you stay until the very end, I have an extra point for you then as well. Now, if you want to connect with me even further before we dive in, you can find all my social media links linked in the show notes below as well. In my life, I've had times when I've been exhausted, and admittedly, right now I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. I'm not 100%, which is a British phrase if you're not familiar of. I'm not feeling too well, and I don't know what I've got, whether it's kind of like a little bit of a flu or virus, but that really got me to make this episode today. And admittedly, I'm a little bit late in recording my episodes for this week, so that's why I really want to talk about this, because it's a really helpful thing for me when I try and move forward in difficult times, like physically when I'm not feeling so well, and also those times mentally when I've just felt a little bit defeated, not so good, maybe a little bit overly stressed. Because in the past, when I've either not been very well or I was like stressed or down, I've had this tendency to push myself through it too hard that made me even worse mentally or physically. And sometimes it's a combination of both. I was just exhausted and mentally very down. And that's why I found it really helpful when I've had a little bit of momentum and I've really listened to my body rather than doing too much. I've had times when I've been so exhausted, I just like really don't want to get out of the bed, like that kind of down, and just not feeling good about myself. And speaking of other people I know, they've been in those places. I've had some people close to me had some, real tough things happen to them, in that they've shared with me. And I know for them, like they were telling me all these things they were trying to juggle and balance when I could just tell by their energy as exhausting them. And yeah, I've been guilty of that myself. Now, I think the thing is, we're conditioned, particularly like in the UK and my friends from the US, but there's other countries where this happens as well. That we get this general, not everyone, but we get this general kind of conditioning of like we've got to work hard. From my experience of knowing people and being wrapped up in it in myself so many times, and it's still something I'm working on, admittedly. Of like we got to work hard to achieve everything we want, and there are some people like online influencers, people who we see as successful, and there's some people I follow in that area who just work really hard all the time, and it's amazing. There's some great people doing a lot of value, but we think therefore when we see them working really hard and on top, therefore we need to be working like that hard 24/7 almost, right? And for me, I know it's not always the best option when I'm in a down state, either mentally or physically. So I found there's times though when I've been in that flow state and I'm just like I want to work, and like I've worked till like 3 in the morning, but it wasn't out of a place of like I'm going to exhaust myself to like death or to my bed of working so hard. It was like this passion, this flow. I was feeling like energy for something. I'm not always in that place though, right? So for me, listening to my body and being able to do the minimum has played a big impact. And I really want to talk about this because like maybe you're someone who just exhausts yourself, or maybe you're a bit down mentally or physically, or both, and it's just not doing you any favors. Okay, and I've certainly been there. So this is what I'm going to suggest if you're like really wanting to move forward, yet you feel a little bit like maybe exhausted. I don't like the term burnout. I'm not a fan of that phrase, if I'm honest. I believe more in, because lots of people talk about it, and I'm not like, I know we've got different views. I'm not a massive fan into believing it, but I think there's like different tendencies, different seasons that your body goes through. And there's times where it needs to like hibernate in the winter, and there's times when it's like it's in like flow and it really wants to work, right? So it's all about listening to yourself. So this is what I have found really useful for me, like when I'm in like a down place mentally or physically. Number one, know your outcome, know where you want to go, right? Like if you're if you're like, okay, I want to make this amount of money in my business, or I want to achieve this weight, okay, great, fantastic. Be very clear so you know where you're moving. If you don't know where you want to go, how do you know where you're going? And the thing is, that sounds obvious. Yeah, I found myself so guilty of just like doing random activities and tasks, and like it had nothing to do with my outcome because I wasn't clear on my outcome. See, lots of people mindlessly going through life because we're like programmed all these things, and other people's priorities comes in. Maybe you can relate to this as well. I know I can. And then you're like, right, what am I doing? Where do I want to go? Oh, I don't even know where I want to go anymore. What are my goals? Like, we get confused. So it's really important, at least on a daily basis, that I write down and read my goals. And I'm like, okay, this is where I want to go. That's what I want. That's what I want. And again, what you want is not what you don't want. It's what you want. Saying, I don't want to be stuck in this job. I don't want to be stuck in this relationship. I don't want to feel in this bad mood. That's not saying what you want. Instead, look for what you want. Now, often if you're like really stuck and you're saying what you don't want, look at the opposite of what you don't want, because that's usually what you do want, right? I don't want to feel like really down and sad all the time. What do you want? I want to feel optimistic and excited to wake up every day. That's a great outcome. You know what you want, right? I don't want to be in this miserable job that I really hate. All right, well, what do you want? I want to be in a job that excites me, that I feel like I matter, that I got purpose, that I'm excited. Or maybe it's your own business, right? That's great. You know what you want, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, right, what is the very minimal you have to do? Like, and I'd narrow that down to each week and each day. And you have to be very honest with yourself, because I'll give a couple of examples, but I've particularly seen this in the entrepreneur space. Now, I'm not a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur, right? But I have seen success in business and success in things like podcasting as well, and various creative pursuits, and in like coaching business, and being in a team that kind of runs a coaching institute as well. And what I've noticed is the people who do really well focus on the things that matter instead of doing masses of things that don't. I'll say that again. People, and that's generally in life, I've discovered, like people who get towards where they want to go are focusing on the very minimal things that matter rather than what they don't. Now, often entrepreneurs, particularly new ones, particularly in the coaching industry, don't focus on the things that matter. And that, for example, is actually going out and having conversations with people about your coaching business and giving them offers and all these kind of things. Now, I've seen some people who weren't so amazing coaches, but they were willing to go out and do that. And they made a lot of money because they were doing the things that mattered, as opposed to like the new coaches, like really like true, like not saying those people weren't like got a big heart or anything, but people who were natural like listeners, really good coaches, but like they were scared to talk about their business and their offer. It was like, oh, well, I'll design my website. Oh, I'm still working on a logo. Oh, I'm going to write a 30-page business plan and all these kind of things that I'm going to design my logo, right? Things that don't really matter, but they're using it because they're hiding around the fear, or hiding from the fear of someone saying no to them, which would be the fear of rejection. So therefore, it's about being honest. What is the minimal things you need to focus on? There's a great book called the 80-20 rule, which is, that's the general rule as well, but there's a book on it. So focus on the things that really, really matter, the minimal, right? So let's use another example in weight loss, right? You might want to research, you want to go to the gym and lose like some weight. Great, amazing. You know what your weight is, right? Now, I've some example, here's a crazy example, right? You go and then you research hours and hours and hours and hours, how to lose weight, what the best ways, and all these kind of things. Is that going to make you lose the weight at the end of the day? No, like doing a little bit of research here and there, probably not, it's not going to do any harm. It might help you a little bit. But like, if you focus on the minimal, which is doing maybe 20 minutes of exercise a day, and I'm not saying this is necessarily for your body type and things like this, it's just as an example, because I know for me, when I've done 20 minutes consistently, as opposed to like 2 hours once or twice a week, it pays a bigger difference, right? So the minimal is like you have 20 minutes a day of exercising, and you make sure you eat like a minimal amount of nutrients you want. And then you put like a boundary in place for the amount of like cheat foods or bad foods, right? It's not being like you're completely crystal clean, because that's that's always going to be a challenge. So what is the minimal you need in order to move forward with where you want to go, right? Emotionally, let's talk about this in regards to mental health, right? Like, there's so many things we could be doing, right? Like the internet, I think one of the biggest challenges for me in the past with mental health and working on my emotions has been like, there's so much that we could use. There's so many tools. Most of it, if I'm honest, is free, right? I pay for coaches and programs because it gives me structure, right? I'm happy to pay thousands for that as well, like, or tens of thousands in some cases, right? So, because I get that guidance, that accountability, that guidance on the way. But there is not a shortage of information out there that's free, even free, or even like cheap, right? Now, you've got all that information out there. That's fantastic. But it's like, right, you can get so overwhelmed. I know I've been there. And it's like, where do I start? All these kind of things, right? Instead of thinking, what is one thing each day this week that I could try that I feel like is going to help me emotionally? Maybe it's journaling. But if you're like, no, this journaling thing's not for me, totally cool. And then, of course, there's always going to be people come in and say, you should journal for 30 minutes a day. No, it's like completely up to you, right? Or you should meditate for an hour a day or 30 minutes a day. It's like, again, it's like, I can see the benefits of meditation. I've done it. And well, my favorite personally is breath work, right? But it's like, what's one thing that would emotionally help you each day? It may be adding something in, maybe taking something out, right? Might be reducing your like social media intake, which is something I've always got to work on, right? Because I go out there and create a lot, but I do get sucked into it occasionally. I notice the impact it has on my mental health when I get too sucked into it, right? But it's like every day, what am I doing? I'm listening to something uplifting, usually. Or there'll be phases when I'm going through like a meditation, right? Whatever I need. So think about the minimal you need every day rather than overloading yourself with tools, and what's going to be a right fit for you, no matter how pressing someone is. Like, you should be doing this, should be doing that. A good coach is not going to tell you what to do if you hire one, by the way. They're just going to guide you to what's best for you because you know the answer within you. But ask yourself that question now. And I'm your coach here as well. I'm guiding you through this thought process, asking you some questions for yourself. And then the third one is celebrate every little thing you do. Like, I've been ill recently, and to get up and walk, admittedly, was exhausting. But I patted myself on the back. I was like, yes, I'm walking. Well done. And then I had to send like a simple email of some photos around my apartment that I had to take. And I was like, that was a lot. Like, even that was a lot of work, but I celebrated when I did it. There was something else I had to do as well, which was a tiny task. Oh yeah, I had to reschedule an appointment for something. But like, even doing that sounds like that's not a lot. But when we're like wanting to just move forward, and when we're maybe our energy's not quite there mentally or physically, then actually celebrating wherever your energy is at, the smallest things, is really going to encourage you to do more of it as well. Now, going to come on to my final point. Just a reminder again, though, that if you want to connect with me more on social media and follow my content, you can connect with me with my links in the show notes below. My final point would be research someone who is further along the path or like a role model for you in an area. So if it's like emotionally, for example, you want there's someone who's like really seems to be joyful and happy in life, right? And you're like, wow, I wish I could be more like that. Now, I don't believe anyone's happy 100% of the time because we're human beings, right? We're having a physical existence. There's emotions, right, involved. There's life experiences. But if there's someone you genuinely know energetically is like joyful and you want to model that, it's like, what is the thing or things or minimal things that they do every day that seems to move them forward? And again, it's got to feel right for you, but use them as inspiration. Maybe there's someone who maybe something they do regularly, just isolate themselves from like social media and the media and the internet. Maybe they just seem to hang around with happy people all the time, and those things can give you clues. And then think, okay, what's something they're doing that I'd like to try or incorporate more of into my life? Financially, like, let's talk about like financially. It's like someone who's making a lot of money. It's like, what's one thing they're doing? Well, they invest into themselves with probably a high probability rather than spending their money on stuff they don't need, right? whether that's their growth, whether that's into some kind of, I don't know, stocks or real estate or whatever. All right. What is one thing they do that you could start doing? Someone in a really like happy relationship, for example, what's like one thing that they're doing, right? Do they make it a priority? Like, do they work on themselves? Do they make like clear boundaries, right? Success leaves clues, as Jim Rohn said. So if you really want a result in an area, then look at what someone who's maybe got a result or further along the path is doing, and maybe take something that they're doing and then just give it a bit of a try for yourself. And again, keep it to the minimal. So that's what I got for you today. I appreciate you for being here. You're improving other people's lives by working on yourself. And remember to lead with your heart, not with fear.